I have mentioned that a major lingua franca in many parts of the world is English, and in fact it is increasingly English which is the major international lingua franca. And I think we need to unpack some issues around English as a lingua franca. Many mother tongue Anglophones believe that because English is increasingly being learned and spoken by people all over the world, that it reduces or even makes redundant the need for Anglophones to learn other languages. I don't think that's true at all. In fact, I think the opposite is true. So if we try and unpack some aspects about English as a lingua franca, it is a language that many people are learning not because they are interested in Shakespeare, EastEnders, our culture. They're not interested in Britain or America or Australia, particularly our cultures. They're learning the language in order to communicate with other people who are not native speakers of English. So English as a lingua franca is most prevalently being used, for example, for the Germans to speak to the Japanese, for the Russians to speak to the Brazilians, for the Chinese to speak to the Angolans. It has nothing to do with British English, American English or Australian English. And there have been a number of observations by businesses that we have spoken to in the UK who work in a global environment with multilingual groups of people in the same room at the same time, trading across borders, etc., who observe that actually some of the least effective communicators in an English lingua franca environment are the mother tongue Anglophones. And I think we need to try and unpack why that might be. After all, it's our own language. Shouldn't we be good at speaking it? But yes, any language that we speak as a mother tongue within our own culture will be full of idiom and metaphor, which is actually closely related, and references, cultural references, closely related to our daily lives here. English as a lingua franca is completely different in that way because it's not about British English or American English, etc. It's a vehicle for international communication. And the British would be much better at communicating in English as a lingua franca if they were better linguists, if they'd learnt other languages and had greater sensitivity, particularly to intercultural communication, but also greater awareness of the language that they're using and what it might mean to other people. Some researchers looking at the implications of English as a lingua franca as a global language have observed, and these from a linguistic point of view, looking at effective communications, that as far as intercultural competencies and strategies are concerned, native speakers are frequently disadvantaged due to their lack of practices in these processes and over-reliance on English as their first language. Now, I think that that awareness needs to be built amongst people who believe that English is enough, because it absolutely isn't.